All right, so you're here on the deep dive, and I think it's safe to say you like to get to the heart of things, right?
Absolutely. No time to waste with all the noise out there.
Exactly. Get to the good stuff.
Hmm.
So today we're tackling something probably most of us encounter daily. Coffee.
The elixir of life for many, right?
I'm guilty as charged, for sure,
Mm-hmm.
but we wanted to go beyond just the I need my caffeine level.
Deeper than that morning fix, yeah.
Right. We dug into some serious research from some names you'll definitely recognize.
The heavy hitters, we've got Johns Hopkins Medicine, the Mayo Clinic.
And the nutrition pros over at EatingWell.
We pulled the most important stuff about how coffee, this thing we basically take for granted, actually impacts your health.
And there's a lot to unpack.
Oh, there is. When you look across these sources, the depth and breadth of the research on coffee's effects, it's honestly a little surprising.
It's way more than just a quick energy boost.
Way more. We're seeing potential links to, get this, longer life and a whole bunch of possible disease risk reductions. It's pretty wild.
Our mission, should we choose to accept it,
Is to break this all down, see where the science really agrees, what's consistent, and give everyone listening a solid understanding of what this all means for them, for their health.
So let's kick things off with the big picture.
Right. Ultimate goal, longevity.
Living longer, healthier lives. And it seems like there's more and more evidence piling up suggesting coffee drinkers might actually do just that.
Yeah, this is a big one. Johns Hopkins Medicine, for example, they pointed to studies where basically women who drank coffee, they were less likely to die from some pretty major causes.
We're talking serious stuff, like heart disease.
Stroke, diabetes, even kidney disease. These aren't small potatoes.
Not at all. And if we zoom out a bit, look at the overall picture. The Mayo Clinic backs this up too.
Right. They're saying that generally coffee drinkers have a lower risk of dying early compared to folks who don't drink coffee.
And it's not just these big medical institutions either.
Right. Good point.
EatingWell brings in a dietitian's take on this.
A boots on the ground perspective.
Exactly. They're saying moderate coffee drinking doesn't look harmful at all.
In fact, it might actually be beneficial.
They even cited a 2017 review that kind of sums up what those other bigger institutions are saying.
So it's lining up, right?
It seems like that morning cuppa might be adding years to our lives.
Potentially, yeah. And this makes you wonder about coffee's impact on specific health conditions. What really jumped out at you from all this research?
Okay, well, everyone's talking about brain health these days, right?
Huge topic, yeah.
And all three sources were consistent in mentioning Alzheimer's and dementia. That caught my eye.
Definitely a theme.
Johns Hopkins Medicine, they were specific about caffeine's potential role in protecting against Alzheimer's.
Interesting. What kind of research did they cite?
They pointed to studies looking at women 65 and older.
Okay, so a specific demographic there.
Right. But what's even more convincing is that the Mayo Clinic, they're on the same page.
Really? How so?
They're reporting a lower Alzheimer's risk among some groups of coffee drinkers.
Interesting. And EatingWell jumps into this conversation too.
Yeah, they bring up evidence that links coffee drinking and a lower risk of neurodegenerative diseases in general.
So both Alzheimer's and Parkinson's.
Both. When you see this kind of agreement across totally separate sources, it starts to feel pretty solid.
Yeah, the consistency is definitely noteworthy.
Now, while we're on the topic of brain stuff,
Parkinson's, let's talk about it.
the picture seems pretty positive there too.
Fill us in.
Okay, so Johns Hopkins Medicine linked caffeine intake to a lower chance of developing Parkinson's in the first place.
Okay, so preventative, potentially.
And they even hinted that it might help people who already have Parkinson's with their movement control.
Interesting. So potential benefits on multiple fronts.
And again, we see that echo effect from both the Mayo Clinic and EatingWell.
What are they saying?
They're both suggesting a connection between drinking coffee and a lower Parkinson's risk. It seems like there might be something in coffee that helps protect our brains.
Some kind of neuroprotective element. Fascinating stuff.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit, talk about another big health concern that affects so many people.
You thinking about type 2 diabetes?
That's the one. What did our research say about that?
Well, across the board, the findings are pretty much in sync.
No big disagreements.
Not really. Johns Hopkins Medicine, they highlighted studies saying coffee drinkers are less likely to develop type 2 diabetes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Mayo Clinic puts this on their list of potential coffee benefits, too.
So more support for that idea.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And EatingWell didn't say anything to contradict that.
So it seems like there's a growing agreement that coffee might actually help protect against type 2 diabetes.
The evidence is pointing in that direction.
It's amazing how many potential benefits we're uncovering here.
It's impressive.
Right. Now let's talk about the heart. Johns Hopkins Medicine mentioned that just 1 or 2 cups a day might help ward off heart failure.
1 or 2. That's not even that much for some people.
I know, right? But EatingWell adds to this. They mentioned a study that linked 3 to 5 cups a day with a 15% lower risk of cardiovascular disease.
So maybe a little more is better for heart health?
Possibly. It suggests there might be some kind of dose-dependent benefit, at least within a reasonable range.
Right. Moderation is key, as with most things. Now, what about our livers?
Our livers love coffee,
But
apparently.
what makes you say that?
Well, Johns Hopkins Medicine specifically said that both regular and decaf coffee seem to protect the liver.
Decaf too. That's interesting.
Right. They saw healthier liver enzyme levels in coffee drinkers overall.
So even without the caffeine, there's something beneficial going on there.
It seems that way, and guess what?
The Mayo Clinic agrees.
They sure do. Lower risk of liver cancer and other liver issues like cirrhosis in people who drink coffee.
So once again, it reinforces the idea that it's not just about the caffeine.
There are other compounds in coffee that are doing good things.
Definitely. And speaking of good things, what about cancer? I mean, we're talking about some heavy-duty stuff here.
Right. Even with something as serious as cancer, there are connections. Johns Hopkins Medicine mentioned that dark roast coffee specifically.
Dark roast.
Yeah, dark roast might have properties that can help prevent DNA strand breakage.
Interesting. So the roast level might matter.
Maybe so. They also pointed out a pretty significant finding, a 26% lower chance of colorectal cancer in coffee drinkers.
Wow, 26%. That's noteworthy.
And get this, both regular and decaf drinkers saw that benefit.
So, again, pointing to something beyond just the caffeine.
Exactly. And the Mayo Clinic broadened this a bit, suggesting coffee might protect against cancers of the mouth, throat, and digestive system too.
So a potential link to several types of cancer.
They did say the evidence isn't as strong for those as it is for colorectal cancer.
Okay, so more research is needed there.
Definitely. And the good news for our circulatory system doesn't stop there.
What else did you find?
Well, Johns Hopkins Medicine found a lower stroke risk for women who drank at least 1 cup of coffee a day.
So that daily cup could be offering some real protection.
Seems like it. And the Mayo Clinic added to that, mentioning studies where 3 to 4 cups a day led to a lower stroke risk in certain groups.
So the optimal amount might be a bit higher for stroke prevention.
It seems that way.
You know, it's amazing how many potential benefits we're finding.
I know, right?
It's like a never-ending list. We even saw mentions from the Mayo Clinic about coffee potentially lowering the risk of metabolic syndrome, chronic kidney disease.
Don't forget gallstones and kidney stones.
Oh, right, those two. It's quite the portfolio of potential perks.
And EatingWell brought up something else that's really interesting.
What's that?
A 2023 study that found moderate caffeine intake was linked to better thyroid function.
Okay, thyroid health is important.
Absolutely. And this was specifically in people with metabolic disorders. It just shows how complex coffee's effects on our bodies really are.
It's not a simple caffeine in, energy out kind of thing.
Not at all. But before we get too carried away singing coffee's praises, let's get real about the potential downsides too.
Yeah, we got to be balanced here.
It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Not for everyone, that's for sure.
The most obvious issue for a lot of people is caffeine sensitivity.
Yeah, some people can handle a lot, others not so much.
All 3 sources were pretty clear. Too much caffeine can lead to some unpleasant side effects.
What kinds of things are we talking about?
Jitteriness, a racing heart, higher blood pressure, anxiety, trouble sleeping. We've all probably been there at some point, right?
Oh yeah, that wired feeling is no fun. Did they say how much caffeine is too much?
Johns Hopkins Medicine recommended no more than 400 milligrams a day for most women.
Okay, so that's like, what, 3 to 5 cups of coffee, roughly?
Something like that, yeah. But they also said it's really important to talk to your doctor if you're pregnant or breastfeeding.
Right, different rules apply during those times.
Definitely. And it's not just about how much caffeine you can tolerate in general. EatingWell also highlighted that too much caffeine can make anxiety worse.
Yeah, it can definitely ramp up those anxious feelings.
And they brought up some longer-term concerns too.
Like what?
A meta-analysis that suggested a possible link between heavier coffee consumption and a higher risk of hip fractures.
Oh, wow, that's concerning.
The Mayo Clinic also talked about bone health. They said that 5 or more cups of coffee a day might be linked to lower bone density in some women.
So maybe not the best for our bones in excessive amounts.
Possibly not, but they did say getting enough calcium might help offset that risk.
Okay, so diet plays a role too, as always.
Absolutely. And then there's the whole issue of caffeine in pregnancy. Definitely a topic where caution is key.
It's a sensitive subject for sure.
EatingWell pointed to a meta-analysis that suggested caffeine during pregnancy could be linked to some pretty serious risks.
Like what?
Miscarriage, stillbirth, low birth weight, even childhood leukemia.
Wow, those are some heavy implications. It sounds as talking to your doctor is crucial during pregnancy.
Absolutely. The Mayo Clinic actually recommended a lower limit for pregnant women, those trying to conceive, or breastfeeding.
How much did they say?
No more than 200 milligrams of caffeine a day. That's about half the usual recommended maximum.
Half. Wow, that's significant. Okay, so what about blood pressure? I know a lot of people worry about that with coffee.
EatingWell addressed that. They said that right after you drink coffee, there might be a small, temporary increase in blood pressure.
Okay, so a short-term spike.
But in the long run, regularly drinking coffee doesn't usually lead to a lasting increase in blood pressure for most people.
So it's more about that immediate effect.
It seems that way. But they did stress that everyone's different, so if you have blood pressure concerns, definitely pay attention to how coffee affects you.
Good advice.
And there's also the potential for developing a dependence on caffeine.
Yeah, that's real.
EatingWell mentioned that. And they said you might even get withdrawal symptoms if you suddenly stop drinking coffee.
Headaches, anyone.
Exactly.
So it's about finding a balance, knowing your limits.
Right. The Mayo Clinic also mentioned that caffeinated coffee can make heartburn worse and maybe make you pee more often.
Oh, not ideal. Anything else?
Yeah, they pointed out something about unfiltered coffee, like from a French press. Seems it might slightly increase cholesterol levels.
Interesting. So the brewing method could matter too.
Maybe so. And then EatingWell threw in a few more things to keep in mind.
Like what?
Coffee can mess with iron absorption, which is something to think about if you have iron deficiency or anemia.
Good point. And it can interact with certain medications too.
Right, they mentioned levothyroxine, which is used for thyroid issues. It really highlights how important it is to consider your own individual health situation.
Absolutely. Coffee is complex, and so are we.
So after all this, the million-dollar question is, how much coffee is the sweet spot?
The Goldilocks zone, not too much, not too little.
Right. What did our sources say about that?
Well, Johns Hopkins Medicine stuck with that 3 to 5 cups a day for most women, staying under 400 milligrams of caffeine.
So that seems to be the safe and potentially beneficial range.
EatingWell basically said the same thing, recommending 3 to 4 cups for healthy adults, but they really emphasized the whole personalized nutrition thing.
Knowing your body and how you respond to caffeine.
Exactly. And both sources said to watch out for what you add to your coffee.
The cream, the sugar, all that.
Right. They recommended healthier options like milk, plant-based milk, spices, and maybe a little natural sweetener.
So, after this deep dive, what's the main takeaway for our listeners?
Well, I think it's fair to say that for a lot of people, moderate coffee drinking can be a really good thing.
Part of a healthy lifestyle.
Exactly. There's a lot of evidence pointing to potential protection against all kinds of diseases, plus other perks like better mood and digestion.
But like we've been saying, it's not the same for everyone.
Right. You got to listen to your body, be aware of any health conditions you might have, and stick to those recommended amounts. And if you're pregnant, well, the rules change quite a bit.
So much to think about next time you're brewing a cup, right?
Right. Are you getting those potential benefits? Have you noticed any downsides? It really seems like everyone has a unique relationship with coffee.
And on that note, here's a final thought to ponder. Given how complex coffee is, all those compounds beyond just caffeine, and the fact that science is always uncovering new things, what other surprising ways might this seemingly simple drink be affecting our health down the road?
It's exciting to think about what we might learn about coffee in the future.